first things first, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's an absolute pleasure to be standing with you, especially as I think you are, aside from Bloodstock, our first in-person interview in about 2 years.
Oh, amazing.
Absolutely, but
that is good.
That's the thing, it's quite obviously the COVID times and things like that. How have you been holding up personally?
Yeah, okay. I think we've been quite lucky through COVID because we started recording in Victor.
Mm-hmm.
So we had all that time to actually carry on writing and get it recorded in between when we kind of opened up again in August. We went back in the studio, so we kind of slotted back in and working on like production layers. So we've kept ourselves busy, and I think without that we probably would have driven ourselves crazy, but we actually had something to focus on.
Well, that's one of the things we hear from almost every band we've spoken to throughout the last 1.5 to 2 years, and particularly when we're coming to this point, that the lockdown period, the time off, the forced time off, actually ended up benefiting them to some degree because they had more time to work on the release. Was that the same case with Skarlett Riot?
Yeah, definitely. I think we had the songs written, but it gave us more chance to work on layers such as like putting piano in and more exciting layers. We're working on like string instruments and little nice elements that you can hear on the album. I think without the extra time to think about that, we wouldn't have been able to add like the extra twinkles in.
Considering you had that time, and when we kind of, as things move back to sort of normal, would you consider going forward always trying to take that time again because of what you've been able to do? Or do you perceive that it's just going to go back to how things were, where you have a deadline effectively?
I mean, that's a good question, really. I think having a deadline's important because then you have something to aim towards and stick to. I think if you're always quite lax with it and don't have something to stick to, then it could take years and years and years to come up with things. So it's nice to have that deadline. But it definitely, you definitely learn from it. I think with lockdown, been able to think a little bit more about what to make the album a little bit different with, do you know what I mean? So I think next time we've kind of learned about extra layers that we can be putting in and maybe to spend a little bit more time on those areas, but still have the deadline in place as well.
Okay, that makes sense. But did you perceive at the time as well, particularly when you were recording and coming to the end of it, that you wouldn't be able to capitalise, or you're always in mind going, well, we've been in this situation for the last 1.5 to 2 years, we will get to it when we can?
Yeah, it was... I mean, because we went back and recorded in August, in the studio, we locked down in May, didn't we? And it was literally the day we locked down that we went in the studio and got kicked straight back out.
Yeah, we'd just done drum tracking, hadn't we?
Yeah.
And then we had like a week off or so, and we were just about to go back in to do like the guitars and the vocals, and then it was like, nah, you need to leave, we can't do anything now.
So I think because of that, the studio were like, as soon as we can reopen, you're the first back in. So even though we did have the thing of everything being delayed, we still felt a little pressure to know that we had to be ready for when we got back in. So there was still that there, and obviously it was August when we opened up slightly and we got to go back in individually, so we had to be ready at that point. So we only really had about 3 months extra. So we still felt a little pressure to make sure that when we could get back in, we were ready for it, if you know what I mean.
You know, absolutely. What's the most positive thing you can kind of look at? Because obviously it's been such a negative period of time, and between the artists and the releases, they tend to focus specifically on what they've been doing in the studio. Trying to find some positive stories in regards to the best that you've been able to get out of a very, very cracked situation. So do you have anything positive that you can point at and go, glad that happened?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it's been nice. Usually we're always have to forward think in the band, like look at the next year, the next 2 years, and because you can't do that and everyone's locked down at the same time, you actually focus on every day and you take every day as it comes and you appreciate smaller things.
Okay.
So I think with that's quite important to still remember to take every day as it comes. And enjoy every day rather than stressing about another year's time. Like, you've still got to do that, but you've also got to have that balance there to take a step back, breathe, and enjoy every day. It's also like live music in general as well. Like, you're gigging constantly. You're like racing through. You're getting all these gigs. You're gigging, you're writing, you're gigging, you're writing, and then as soon as it's taken away to do live music, it's like what you took for granted is no longer something that you can do. So I think, like, yesterday was our first show in 2 years, and to get on that stage again, it was like, oh my god, and like, all these things that you take for granted, and we got on stage and like, it's just like like really important that we're back up here again. Do you know what I mean? And people have come and there's a crowd and we can play the music. So I think it just makes you appreciate things a little bit more.
And talking about yesterday being the first day of the tour, was it really encouraging to actually get that crowd out, particularly because there was always this question about when gigs come back, whether or not not just the hunger, but whether people will be fearful to come back to venues and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, we were a little bit nervous, weren't we, about the turnout, whether people would be a little bit nervous. And we were nervous ourselves, obviously, because, you know, been on the stage compared to been rehearsing to be on the stage, it's completely different. I made a joke yesterday about I've sat through lockdown eating biscuits, I'm back on the stage and it's really hot and I'm like, I'm out of breath. I forgot how hard this was to actually perform. So yeah, I think it's just getting back into the swing of some normality, and I think it's the same for people coming to gigs as well, just been more comfortable again. We've been around a large crowd and a smaller sort of area.
Were you worried, or are you worried about the future of rock and metal in this country in regards to grassroots venues? Because one of the biggest concerns, obviously, throughout the lockdown, and particularly the harder part of it, was whether or not venues would survive, particularly behind the scenes stuff and stuff like that. Coming out of it, we've lost some, but we seem to be doing okay. Are you concerned about it going forward?
In a way, but I'd like to hope now things have opened up again, they'll be able to claw music back, money back, and there's so many tours been rescheduled and moved around, and there's a lot of tours that I've seen that have been sold out as well. So I'd like to hope that people will get back out there when they're comfortable to and support these venues, and then they'll bring all that money back in and we'll be okay again hopefully next year. So yeah, I'm positive about it.
This tour here, where you kind of desperately trying to sort of jam it in, because obviously going forward throughout 2022 and even into 2023, it's looking very, very messy. There's not going to get any better, particularly festivals, I think, because the rebooking of every band. Was this kind of like get something in now, because we may not be able to do something for a while?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we started booking it quite a while ago, but we were struggling for venues because venues were booked up, or some of the smaller ones didn't want to take too much of a risk on bands that weren't quite like at that stage where they're like, we know this will sell out and we know that we're going to make money. When you're at that kind of stage where promoters are a little bit hesitant because they don't know how it'll go either way, it's harder to get those venues in place. So we did claw what venues we could in the time frame that we had, and we just said, because at the time we were still locked down, we were like, let's put this in for November. If we're open, we play. If we're still locked down, it gets rescheduled, just to make sure that we have something in, because Invicta come out in May, and we had obviously no shows to promote the album, so we just wanted to get back out again. So yeah, we pretty much booked these in place as soon as we could, and took what venues we could actually get, because it was quite a lot, which especially Saturday nights, Sunday nights that were booked up, hence it started on a Tuesday.
It is a chilly Wednesday evening in London, the perfect time for a rock gig.
Of course.
Invicta overall then, how have you found fan reaction to it? It seems to have been pretty solid across the board. Everybody's kind of saying it's your best work to date. Yeah,
definitely. Everyone's, I haven't really seen anything negative on it, which is really good. And it's nice as well when you get back into playing live music to actually see the reaction from the new songs as well, because we've not actually been able to talk to the fans one-to-one and just gone, what do you think? Do you like it? What's your favourite song? And you lose that kind of interaction, and you only really see things online on like your YouTube comments and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's had a really good reaction, and obviously we're biased in thinking that it is the best release that we've done so far, because every band who releases another album expects it to be better than the one before. But yeah, it has been received really well.
That's why we don't bother with the dumb question of, what do you think of this album? The expectation is it is your best work to date. Last one for you then, and it's simply going forward. So is the plan now, finish the tour, chill out over Christmas, stuff you can talk about, and hope for a busy 2022?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have something in place for June next year already, so as long as everything runs smoothly, that will be going ahead with another tour. So we're going to be finishing this and then starting to write again. over the Christmas period and the gap in between, and get another album ready. Fingers crossed.
That's it, it's all the expectation being on you. That while you've all had this time off, you've had 2 years of doing nothing, surely you have hundreds of songs in the background ready to go.
That's it, yeah.
Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?